What up, Hope and Skits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. And what did I tell you? What did I tell you? I told you if I had to drag my husband here by the hair and tie him to the seat, this video was gonna get done. And lo and behold, here we are. And you can't tell if he's tied to the seat or not because you can't see anything below his waist.
This video is sponsored by McGlynn's $5 cups that you get with a beer that's also $5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love McGlynn's. It was a very fantastic
I didn't
place
have
in
to be
Delaware.
tied to a seat, but I did have to be tricked. And that's very similar, but it's good to be back. The last time that we were here, we really were digging in deep into history from beer. Basically, the whole last video was a bunch of new information.
Yep.
But the perspective seems pretty consistent. And the impact of beer has not ended yet, and I'm ready to continue the journey.
Today we are here for Extra History's History of Beer, number 4. Like then should put a ring. He did put a ring on it, it's fine. And this one is called Fermenting Revolution. I have waited months for this.
Yeah.
I've waited so long. I'm so excited. Are you excited? Are you pumped? Are you ready?
I'm not at your level, but I am ready to experience the video. My phone's ready for sleep. And I'm ready to go. I am ready to do it.
Hope y'all are doing well, staying safe and sanitized. I'm excited to see what this video has in store for us. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, here we go.
Green Dragon Tavern, Boston,
That's right.
1768. The Sons of Liberty have gathered to lift tankards in solidarity. They do so surrounding a silver bowl filled with rum punch, made by one of their members, Paul Revere. Another among them is a malter named Samuel Adams, who produces the serialized mixture sold to brewers to make beer. And across from him is John Hancock, a merchant specializing in importing Spanish wine. They swill American beer and rum, talking about how new British laws have impacted their lives.
Yeah.
The Sugar Act squeezed the rum business. Trade restrictions kept the colonists from selling their products, including alcohol, abroad. And now they have to quarter British soldiers in their homes, barns, and stables, and were legally required to give them 5 pints of beer a day.
Jesus!
Yeah, dude, and I remember reading where like a lot of people were like, man, if I just didn't have to see these guys everywhere, it wouldn't be so bad.
Right.
Like you take all the money, you make all the decisions,
Yeah.
but then you put all these guys around like we're not having all our money taken by you.
Right.
You know, just insult to
It's
injury.
like flaunting it in our faces.
Yeah.
In retaliation, Boston brewers have instituted a boycott, refusing to buy British malt. The colonies are drinking their way toward revolution.
It's dope.
Thanks so much to HelloFresh for helping us bring this history to the table. By the 18th century, Europe was barreling toward revolution, and the Green Dragon Tavern was not alone as a center for dissent. During both the American and French revolutions, rebels organized themselves around taverns and other drinking establishments, and later beer halls would serve a similar role in the revolutions of 1848. But another revolution was taking place at the same time, one centered on the process of making beer. See, for most of history, beer had little competition. Apart from grape-producing regions where wine was cheap enough for common people to enjoy, there just wasn't another commercial beverage that could compete with it. But now, there were tons, with the increasing global trade network bringing more options. Coffee, originally from Ethiopia, that you can learn more about in our History of Coffee series here, had made its way through Europe. Not to mention, tea had arrived on the scene from China, and Europe had even gotten a taste for the Aztec practice of drinking chocolate. But the biggest rival of beer was distilled spirits, which began circulating in the 13th century as medicine, and named with nebulous terms like strong waters or aqua vitae. And a few centuries of experimentation meant that by the 18th century, brandy, rum, gin, and whiskey were not only commercially viable products, but increasingly tasted way better than years prior. So if you wanted to get drunk, and no ifs, ands, or buts about it, the early modern Europeans most assuredly did, spirits got the job done a lot faster and at a lower cost.
Crazy that like alcohol tastes the way it does. They're like, yeah, this is better than what it was before.
Yeah, man, I just wonder if it was more chemically or just had more like of an earthy flavor to it. They're like, dude, this is gonna be drunk, but like it's so fucking grainy. It's got like seeds in it or something. I just kind of want to know what like gin tasted like before we got to where it is now.
Right.
It's rubbing alcohol.
Yeah.
That's so spicy. It gives me heartburn immediately if it's not mixed with something.
But also weirdly floral, like a perfume.
Yeah, so was it just like eating a flower? Like how much worse does it get?
I can't imagine.
Though with a lot more danger as well. During the gin craze of the 18th century,
Gin
London started
craze?
seeing a level of drunkenness
That's
it
what
had
I'm
never
saying.
experienced before. People were
It's
dying of
different.
alcohol poisoning, a thing almost impossible to do with lower strength beers common at the time.
Right.
Drunk Londoners were dying in gory accidents, losing their businesses, and even selling their or their children's clothes to buy gin.
Oh,
And while this created a
man,
moral
that's
panic about
crazy.
drunkenness,
I thought he was going to say they were selling the babies.
Oh, shut up.
I
It's
was
not
like-
opium, it's gin.
I was like, are you kidding me?
Jesus Christ, babe.
Oh my, did you see my face?
It's still gin. We're still not in drugs yet. Opium, people were selling their families for debt forgiveness, but this is a little different.
and while this created a moral panic about drunkenness
course.
in the lower classes,
Of course.
and it's always about the lower classes, I mean, members of parliament were actually admired for their ability to give speeches while drunk, this moral outcry also provided cover for beer. In contrast, beer was seen as wholesome, even healthy. In 1751, English artist William Hogarth published The Prince, Beer Street, and
That's
Gin
right.
Lane to make an explicit side-by-side comparison.
I see.
I have
Gin
seen
Lane,
that, yeah.
The people are dying skeletal zombies. A
Jesus.
carpenter pawns his tools as buildings fall apart, while violence and crime are rampant. Meanwhile, over on Beer Street, the only one going out of business is the pawnbroker. Everyone is rotund, happy, prosperous, patriotic, and glowing with health and virality. And
Wow.
not only was beer supposedly healthy, it was entering a new era of innovation. Large brewers were starting to produce it in larger volumes, and new types of beer popped up all over Europe. Crucially, these were not created using additives, but rather by innovations in the process of
Right.
fermentation.
So how
In
do
the
we get it?
1760s, a new series of technologies appeared that meant beer could be produced with greater consistency and control. Steam engines made large-scale factories
okay.
easier to manage. Thermometers and hydrometers meant beer could be monitored for temperature and consistency while brewing. And the drum roaster, created in 1817, sealed out the smoky flavor malts acquired by roasting directly
Oh.
over wood, straw, or a coal concentrate called coke. One of these new exciting
Nice.
beers
I never
arose in
considered
England
that.
just before the gin craze. By the 1720s, London brewers were selling a new brew called porter, a name that supposedly
like
arose because it
porters.
was popular among the porters that carried loads on the streets and docks. Made with a dark malt and heavily hopped, it was delicious, cheap, and lasted for months.
Delicious is questionable. It does have a taste, though.
I'm not a fan of hoppy beers.
Yeah.
You know what my favorite beer is, guys? Michelob Ultra.
Yeah.
It tastes like
It's
water.
like beer water extract.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not even the original
It's,
beer
it's
water.
like if you took a glass of water and then like waved some beer over it.
yeah, like you... with one, like a porter, like you blew
Yeah.
a porter froth
Yeah.
over some water, then added ice. You
Yeah.
get Michelob Ultra.
Porter beer traveled all over
Nothing.
Europe, but it was in Ireland where it made its biggest impact. There, breweries began making it particularly strong, or extra stout, in the language of
Nice.
the time. And
Interesting.
Irish brewers often used malt that had been cooked until it was crisped, giving the
Oh.
thick beer a deep black color. And one
Then
brewer
what?
became so
Guinness.
famous for it, his name has become forever linked with the
Really?
drink.
Is that
Arthur
how you
Guinness.
get Guinness?
Though another fan of stout was Catherine the Great,
Oh.
who insisted that her court be supplied with the best English beer.
Interesting.
Supposedly, English sailors found that beer shipped to Russia tended to freeze, and in response, developed a brew with a high enough alcohol content to prevent
that it
ice from
would.
forming. Thus, the story goes, Russian Imperial Stout was born, though that wasn't the
Fascinating.
only beer created by a sea voyage. Pale ales, a golden or amber-colored ale, had arrived around
That's
the same
what I-
time
yeah,
as porter.
I like pale
It's a
ales.
beer the East India Company was interested in, given that porter was too heavy for company officials and troops serving in the heat of the subcontinent. So they went to a brewer named George Hodgson, who was just up the river from their docks. After experimenting with other beers, he tried making a well-known brew called October Ale. This was
Okay.
a heavily hopped autumn beer that was supposed to mature in the cask for a year, before being
Jesus.
bottled to mature for another year. But Hodgson got extremely lucky.
Yeah,
The
how did we do
conditions
it?
of heat and agitation on the 4-month journey to India sped up the maturation process, and
Right.
it arrived ready to drink. And though his sons went on to lose the contract, a rival brewery recreated the formula, which by then was already known as India Pale Ale. Yet beer innovation was not the sole province of the English. Most German beers had traditionally been lager, a name derived from a process called lagering, which meant letting them ferment in basements under relatively low temperature. One type, Doppelbock, was even left out to freeze in winter and the ice discarded in order to concentrate it.
Imagine concentrated beer. That's nuts. That's great.
So many teaspoon shots. So you have people out there jacked up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we call this the lodger. This shit'll put you in a bed.
Oh no.
These beers were often dark and sweet, but that was changing. In the early 1930s, Gabriel Siedemeyer of the Spaten Brewery in Munich traveled Europe in hopes of learning how to modernize the German brewing industry. Supposedly, he even engaged in industrial espionage, stealing malt, hops, and beer samples from the British breweries and hiding them in a cane. When he returned, he adopted thermometers, installed the first brewery steam engine in Germany, and tried making a pale ale with the process of lagering, thereby inventing pale lager. Another Bavarian brewer, Josef Groll, decided to iterate on pale lager at his own brewery in Pilsen, in what is now the Czech Republic. That resulting beer would be named after his city, Pilsner. This pale lager, or Pilsner, some use them interchangeably, exploded. Light and refreshing. It was the perfect type of drink for warmer climates. Bavarian brewers then took it to the United States, where it became the leading style. And German immigrants also took it to Mexico, where most beers are still lagers, and garnished it with local touches like lime, salt, and chili powder. Now, trust me, Rob and I could go on like this for hours, and we have in private meetings, but you get the point. By the mid-19th century, there were more beers available than ever before, and in greater quantities. And breweries were no longer at-home operations, but large industrial factories. For example, in 1814, a series of rusting tank rings at a brewery in London gave way, flooding the district with beer, wiping out multiple buildings, and killing 8 people.
Talks about
he did.
That's how much beer they were making. Enough to cause a natural disaster. But a happier thing happened a few years earlier in 1810. A wedding. On a fine October day, Crown Prince Ludwig married Princess Therese on a meadow outside Munich. They held a parade and days of horse racing, with beer of course present in abundance. It was so fun that they decided to do it again the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. In fact, apart from cancellations due to wars and epidemics, it's been held every year since, both in Munich and in German communities all over the world. You probably know it as Oktoberfest, and I've been to a few.
So cool.
But German immigrants would carry more than drinking festivals abroad. So join us next time as humanity finally discovers yeast. The temperance movement leads to a crusade against alcohol, and a German immigrant, fresh out of the Union Army, creates the largest beer company in the world.
Oh man, that did not get into as much of the war part as I wanted.
And I was so ready for it,
Oh my goodness.
Like, not to say that I'm not happy to learn about all the different beers, like that's really interesting, but I was ready for the bloodshed.
I was just, because there was so much that happened just because they were able to get together.
Right.
And when they did the coffee one, they spent a lot of time talking about the political influence it had with the people at the time. And he just kind of ran through like the different guys that were there and involved. Yeah. And then just segued directly into how it grew with different kinds of beers.
Yeah. Definitely wanted to hear more about the revolution part.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit disappointing, but it's really interesting to find out how the different beers came to exist. I think this video did a good job on focusing on the subject, which is beer.
Yeah.
Because it would be really easy to just start talking about the American Revolution.
Right.
But there are videos on that. We have videos on that. We can watch videos on that.
True.
But we are here for the history of beer.
All right, well, we're going to follow into the next era. Now, Prohibition's going to be very fun to see how they handle beer.
Yeah.
I hear about how they handle the strong spirits, but I would love to hear how beer was affected by that because I literally have never heard of it.
Hopefully, it won't be another 4 months before we get to the next section. Next time I might have to chloroform him or something. I don't know. I don't know, guys. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below. Love you guys. Drink water. Peace out, hope biscuits. It's Skittenlit.